Okay, so I have pulled up a purchase contract and a buyer contingency because that's what we're going to talk about today. And this is just one of my templates. In Transaction Desk, you can build templates, and you can build buyer templates. I have listing templates. I have tenant templates. I have landlord templates. If you work with investors and a certain type of investors, because investors like to make offers, a certain way, you can even build a template up for that investor or your buyer. Or if you're selling a bunch of properties, it just saves you so much time, you guys. I'm dyslexic. So when they came out, back when I was a baby agent, everything was carbon copied. And so technology, as much as it may not work, when it does work, it is fabulous. So I get excited anytime I'm writing a contract or helping someone. And when I'm tired or I have a lot going on, if I'm checking my phone, checking my email, and I am not detailed and I'm dyslexic, so I tend to mess up the numbers or the letters. And that's just something that I found out when I got into real estate. So building my templates up, I will build my buyer contract, and I'll even write notes in there to help me. So as we go through this, you're going to be able to see it. You can build a template up if you work mainly with FHA buyers, if you work with conventional buyers, VA buyers. And then based on your client, when you're writing the offer, you're going to change that obviously for your client and the property. So when you have a template, you're not going to have a seller's name, and you're not going to have a property's address or anything in here. But if you need to remind yourself of putting this information in here, then write yourself a note. It's super easy because in your template, those are your notes. Those are notes to yourself, even if you have to do maybe even a highlighter. I love the templates. That's what they're about. And you can even write test or put it in all caps, put in buyer's name, put in seller's name. So whatever you need to do to remind yourself, just do that. I always work off the tax records also. As much as the system will populate the information for you, it's only good as the listing agent's information off MLS and or some of the tax records. So I always have the tax records pulled up, and we usually check this box too, because sometimes the seller's information is inaccurate. Maybe it's in a trust. You're not going to know anything until you actually get into escrow, but I always verify off Monsoon, the seller's last names. If there's middle initials, I will copy and paste the full legal description. So those are things I just look for, and always double checking the assessor numbers. Listing agents, we're not perfect, we're humans. So you have to remember, humans are inputting the information. Purchase contract. When you get down here, your purchase price, this is what you want to offer. This is what the buyer wants to offer. So you as the agent, hopefully you've done a CMA on the property and have given them some numbers. Maybe you've even discussed with the listing agent if there's other offers on the property and where are they at. Most listing agents will give you something if they're at list, if they're over list, if they're under. How many are there? So that you guys know where you can come in at. But this is your offer right here. And then earnest money. You guys, we don't really have a rule for earnest money. Other states do. The standard could be 1% of the sales price, or some people like to say 3%. There's no rule. What you have to remember is the money is coming out of the buyer's checking account, or savings account, and it's going to be held with title and escrow. So that's really important, because if your client only has $500 in their account, then you're only going to write $500 for earnest money. And that's going to be taken out. Now, when you start dealing with luxury properties, it is super important. So that is something you do need to remember. You know, $1 million plus properties, you're dealing with earnest money of 30,000, 50,000. And so timeline's very, very, very important, because earnest money is just crucial. It's super important. The next line item, well, let's go back up to earnest money. I have notes in here that it can be applied towards close of escrow, towards your closing costs. It could be applied towards their down payment. Be careful writing these items in here unless you've spoken to the lender. Earnest money can be used however the lender is going to use it. And if it's a VA buyer, they're probably going to get that earnest money given back to them. So you can't write any verbiage here, because anything written in the purchase contract, anything on counteroffers, anything on addendums, the title and escrow, they have to follow that. So if the lender doesn't like anything that you guys have written, the lender is going to ask you to clear anything up. So always a relationship with your lender. You know, if you're going to be asking for things, credits, anything, ask the lender. That way you can have a nice clean contract. And then find out how much money they're putting down. The AZ pre-qual can get really confusing. I just like to ask the lender, how much money are they putting down? 5%, 10%, 20%, 15%, just 3%. Just tell me straight up. FHA could be 3.5. VA is usually 0, but they still have the opportunity to put money down. And this is not set in stone. So this is actually a negotiation piece if there's other offers, because your clients may say, hey, I'm probably going to put 20 or 15% down, but I'm not 100% sure. This really doesn't matter if it changes or not. What matters, obviously, is the purchase price. That can't change, and the earnest money. So at the end of the day, between the buyer and the lender, how much money they're putting down, that's between them. You do need to disclose what type of loan, and then that last line item. And I should have notes in here for you guys too. This is where a lot of people get super confused, and it's frustrating to me. But this line item is always your down payment minus the purchase price. Earnest money has nothing to do with it. Earnest money is not even touched until the end of closing. That's held there in case the buyer breaches. So you know, it's really the buyer's money and what it gets applied to at closing. But it's a down payment minus the purchase price, and that's going to be your loan amount at the end of the day. So all these line items here have to be filled out and spelled out. And then what kind of a loan is your client doing? Now, super, super important, guys. Once you make your offer and you have your AZ pre-qual, like the AZ pre-qual is part of the purchase contract. You can't make an offer without it. If you change lenders, if you change the loan and you go from conventional to FHA or to VA, you have to disclose in writing to the seller, and it's got to be on an addendum, or you have just breached the contract. They can go after earnest. So this is really, really important. If your client is not sure of what kind of a loan, or if they even change lenders, like they're still shopping, and buyers will do this. So communication with your buyers is super, super important. I try and talk to them even during the inspection period, like, hey guys, what's going on? How are things going? Because if they're changing anything, you need to know. The lender gets alerted, the current lender, if they're shopping around, and if something's going on. So communication's always key, because if the seller doesn't sign off on the addendum of the new notification, you have a problem. Because changing this loan right here, the property may not qualify, and you have a completely different appraisal, and your purchase price may not even fly, and you may not hit your closing date. You have so many different factors coming in. The buyer may not even qualify now. So there's so many things. So your offer that you made in good faith to that seller, and the seller signed and agreed upon, has just pretty much crumbled. So right here, these pieces, really, really important. So any changes, it's got to be in an addendum, notified immediately. It's a contract. It's a legal binding contract. I always, when my templates, always the boxes are checked, always, because they're so small. And any of the new agents that are in our coaching program, I'll always respond to go, hey, line item this, check your box, line item this, fix this, line item this. And we can tell, even the coaches, if you're using templates or not, because none of your contracts look the same. So typically, earnest money should be wired, and no agent should be taking earnest money, no personal checks. You don't ever want to be accused that you have someone's account info. And always it's with the escrow company. Always. I mean, there's no broker trust account. Always. Close of escrow. I have notes in here, 30 days, 30-day sale. But again, you've got to ask your lender. I always reference it back, and this is just how I was taught. You have your team. Your team is your title company. Your team is your lender. And this is why, even if your buyer has a lender already, introduce yourself and get that rapport going and build a relationship, because the communication is super important. Because if you're making an offer and you put in that you want to close in 30 days, the lender may not be able to do it. Or because of the buyer's financing or everything they have going on, they may not be able to close. And we're going to be talking about contingencies. So when there's a contingency, your closing date's going to be wrapped around the other property's closing. So we'll be coming back to this too. But again, I always, this is always a team discussion, is your closing date. You know, you try and make a plan. And when you're talking to your buyers, it's even at the very beginning with a buyer presentation, you're talking to them about, what living situation are they in? What is their time frame? Do they have a lease? Where are they moving from? So I think this is really great. One of my buyers is moving here from Wyoming. They have 3 children. They have multiple dogs, cats. They have 4 or 5 horses. One of their daughters does barrel racing. So they're coming from Wyoming, because we're talking about contingencies, okay? So you're going to be working with other realtors. So let me just tell you this. Wyoming is a non-disclosure state. They do not work with other realtors, and they do not disclose anything. So my clients have a contingency. That means that any offers on a house they want to purchase in Arizona, they cannot close until the house in Wyoming sells. So they started looking at properties here. They have a job offer here, and they actually started this week. So they were freaking out. They put their house on the market in Wyoming. And I said, where's your CMA? I need to know, like, we can't make offers on houses in Arizona. I need to know your market in Wyoming. Well, the realtors in Wyoming, non-disclosure. So my clients don't even have a CMA. They don't even know what that is. They don't have paperwork. Their agents won't talk to me. So I finally had to like kind of court them, nudge my clients, hey, you're entitled to this. You should be getting this. And oh, by the way, when you get that paperwork, can you get it over to me? Because I'm going to need it. Because we are a disclosure state. And if we make offers and get under contract, I need to provide information to the listing agent or they're not going to accept any of our offers. So my clients finally got an offer on their home in Wyoming. Yay! But that buyer has a contingency. So we have contingency after contingency, contingency, triple effect, super fun. So my clients are freaking out. So I said, you know what? You need to let's breathe. You have a couple things to happen. The family can stay in Wyoming and settle the sale there, and the husband can move out here and get temporary housing, maybe a short-term lease, an apartment, or stay in a hotel while he starts his job. Or we can find an Airbnb that takes dogs. Even some of the apartments right now will take dogs. Let's figure this out. I sent them a whole bunch of storage facilities. So as you deal with relocation or families moving out of state, you're sending them a bunch of information. Once they figured on the areas that they like, also, you're sending them different maps, different moving, different websites, schools, all kinds of stuff for them. They've ended up, even their kids schooling online too. So they've decided the whole family's getting out here and they're leaving Wyoming. So we found a couple places for them to board their horses and storage facilities. They found an Airbnb for 30 days and we did get under contract, but that took a week to negotiate getting under contract. And I got a copy of all their paperwork on their sale and I had to submit that to our listing agent. So the closing date for our Wyoming is October 13th. And I requested a couple days out for our Arizona closing because I don't know Wyoming, how quickly they can get their funds here. I did talk to the agent in Wyoming and ask them about wiring and that they're going to have to work with the title company here. So they have agreed to do that. There are other states, and I've worked with quite a few other states, Indiana, East Coast, and you can even do closings in one day. That's super hard. It's super stressful. I've had people actually driving in U-Haul trucks, and I do recommend closing on one day and closing on the next house the next day, and then just explaining to your clients that they need to find housing, for 1 or 2 nights. So as long as you're very open and you work on a plan with them and coordinating so that it's not stressful. Communication's always key with everyone, and that's with the lender and title company and all parties. I think that truly is the best situation. This is where a lot of agents really forget is line items 36, 37, 38. And we really push the agents. So it's a very important buyer contingency that you have this box checked. And if there's an HOA, and then anything else. This is if you're a backup, you want to check additional clause. This is if there's a solar addendum, if there's lead-based paint, you guys read this. And then we always check others. You never know. And you never, it's not it's just a matter of time that you will be in a lawsuit. This is your paper trail. If you go to court or have to talk to an attorney, right here, the attorneys and the judge will say, well, this is all the paperwork attached with this offer. Where is all this? You want to be specific, to be terrific, be specific. And I learned that very at the beginning. Just list everything out. And some agents from their brokerages will say, remove this, remove that, but at least you can write it in here and it can be stated at the very beginning. So any mold addendums, any pool addendums, the wire fraud, your AZ pre-qual, if it's cash, then yeah, you need to write in here proof of funds. Always, it should be required. And then the second page, super important. When you guys are showing houses, you can kind of get a feel if someone likes a house. They're in the house a little while, or they really like it. And there's a fridge, washer, and dryer. Just quickly go in, take a picture of the model numbers. Take a picture, really super quick. Now you have them. I have seen where the sellers or the agents will swap the appliances out, guys. It does happen. It does. So as much as we can say as seen inside or on the MLS photos, it does not state the brand, the make, the model. It doesn't state the year. It doesn't list any of that. So to really what it is the model number, or at your buyer walkthrough and the appliances are gone. That's not fun either, because that's happened. So it doesn't matter if it's in the MLS Plano. It has to be on the purchase contract, or it has to be on a counter or an addendum. It's got to be stated. And the problem is when you're walking through a house, anything a buyer sees, they think they get. So our job is to really point out what's attached and not attached. Just like when you're going through a listing appointment, it's going through with buyers. And I'll do it super nice. I'll be like, oh, you like these curtains? They're cute, huh? They don't stay. Just wanted to let you know. And you can be super fun with that. Oh, you like that chandelier? It should stay, but I'll check with the listing agent. Make your notes. It's okay to point these things out, or read what conveys, what doesn't, and point it out with your buyers while you're there. And especially when you're out back. So my clients from Wyoming, we had our inspection period this past week. And they finally were like, okay, we like this. We like the patio equipment. I said, or the patio furniture. And I said, that's great. It doesn't convey. And there's a big Ramada. And so I pushed on it. I said, it's not attached. It doesn't stay. If they decide to leave it, that's a bonus, but you don't get it. And we didn't ask for it to convey, so you don't get it. But same thing as you're walking through showing the houses, if you see a barbecue, double check that there's wheels, because if there are, it's not built in. And if you see shelves, like we were in the garage and there's built-in racks, technically we know those are attached, they should stay. But I pointed it out, I said, look, those are their racks. I can't guarantee if those are going to stay or not. I'm just letting you know, because the other racks that match are not attached. So I already set that precedence with the husband. It covers yourself, and you can follow up in an email with your client and take photos. But the fun thing, like even in this market, is you can walk through and you can be like, oh, there's a pool table. They probably don't want to move that. Do you guys want that? Let's ask for it. Ask for the pool table and all the equipment. All right, so there are things you can ask for, and you just list them in here. You do have to write that there's no value to them, because the lender's not going to want to see that. And they may, in the end, ask you to remove them out of the purchase contract. And if that's the case, then you'll do a separate bill of sale that's not in the purchase contract, and both buyer and seller will sign it, and there'll be no dollar value. And it's okay. So we have ways of dealing with that. But at least it's initially in the contract, and both parties agree to it. You guys, if you have questions, chime in, because I'm not reading chat or anything. And I'm just going to keep going. Type of financing, again, this is where you're going to disclose. This is super important. Make sure that your offer is matching the AZ pre-qual. You should be getting a copy of that. You know, not all the time do I have that when I'm taking them out. I may be getting that right when I'm making the offer. I've already spoken with the lender, so they've already said, yeah, they're good to go, Mara, it's fine. Just let me know what house you guys find for and I'll get you over an AZ pre-qual. Okay. You know, so however you're working your business, but the AZ pre-qual needs to match your offer. So if the AZ pre-qual says FHA, then your offer better say an FHA loan, or find out from the lender, because sometimes the buyer and the lender may change because the rates are fluctuating. And so one loan may be better or one might not. So things change. So you could actually get like 5 or 6 different pre-quals on one buyer, and they could have different purchase prices. So just stay organized. I usually create a file for each of my clients, and then save each pre-qual for whatever I need to. Seller concessions, yeah. Just a heads up, my buyer from Wyoming, we got 2% concessions, home warranty paid. We offered them full price. I mean, they were trying to counter, they wanted to do 1%. I said, okay, you're going to come down and give me 1%, then we're not going to give you full price. So, so that was that. In here, you can write in your percentage, and you can ask the lender, hey, if we're going to ask for buyer closing costs, how much do you need? Because each buyer is different. And some of them might need concessions to buy down the interest rates or some of their points. You never know. Everyone's different, and everyone has different loan costs. And it may not be a percentage. It could just be a flat rate. And if there's room on the, you can tell I get excited. I love this kind of stuff. The, depending on what you guys are asking for, this is where you can keep it at list price, or you can even go up a little bit more if there's room to wiggle with the list price, just to offset and be like, hey, seller, these are things we're asking for because my buyer needs help with these things. Because yeah, the interest rates have gone up, but we're going to use the concessions to buy down our interest rate right now and get them in a home and keep their mortgage, their monthly payment low. But we're going to give you extra money. And I've run comps, so I think it's going to appraise a little higher than the list price because we're seeing the prices drop a little bit. So you can offer a little bit more, right? Make the seller happy. So if you're asking for an extra 10 grand, offer the seller an extra 10 grand. It's like a win-win. We used to do this all the time. So you just want to make sure that it can appraise or not. So running your numbers, the CMAs, you know, but this kind of stuff, it's super fun for me. I like that we're back to negotiating. And usually you can talk to the listing agent beforehand and go, hey, what are you guys looking for? Is the seller up for contingency offers? Are they willing to play ball? Like, what's their closing time frame? You know, that typically is good conversation. Appraisal costs, usually they're paid by the buyer. You know, we'll keep an eye on the market. Sometimes the sellers might be willing to pay for that, but usually the buyer. And then if you're asking for concessions, this is what's super important. You want to check this box. The fee will be applied against the seller's concessions, because now your buyer is being credited back what they paid for the appraisal. Super important. Before, we were just checking will not because we weren't asking for any concessions. But if you're asking for concessions, then why not try get credited back your appraisal fee? Just saying. So this is a really fun box, and a lot of agents never think to even look at it. But I don't know, I like it. Templates, this is where you can write in your title company of choice, who you're working with. You know, last year we didn't get a choice. We had to work with whoever that seller wanted. Or we left it blank and we were like seller's choice. So your templates, you write up who you want, or I try and give it love and I'll use a couple different title and escrows, and depends on how much what you're doing. And make sure you're reading these contracts. There's timelines to everything. And what did we pass? This one's important, the appraisal contingency. So here it talks about changes, the pre-qual. So anytime any financing terms, loan program, it's got to be disclosed to the seller and disclosed in writing. Okay. LSU has to be given to the seller within 10 days after contract acceptance. So these timelines are really important, guys, and a lot of lenders don't follow this. So you've got to hold your lender accountable, and be careful too if the buyer's picking a bank or credit union, because they don't follow any of the contracts. Appraisal contingencies. So buyer's obligation is to complete the sale. It's contingent upon appraisal. If the appraisal fails, if it comes in under, if it's over. So if it's over or at, then you just have to let the seller know that, hey, or the listing agent, hey, appraisal came in at sales price, we're good to go. If there's no conditions, you let them know that. Conditions would be if the appraisal comes back, the appraiser says, hey, door needs to get fixed, paint needs to get fixed, carpet needs to get cleaned, some sort of conditions. Any conditions, they have to get fixed before close of escrow, and the appraiser has to come back out and verify it, or your loan's not going through. And oh, by the way, when the appraiser comes back out, that fee gets charged to the buyer. So make sure the house is good to go before your appraisal happens. If the appraisal's short, you have 5 days to figure it out, or you have to cancel to get your earnest money back. So timeline, super important. We're always watching earnest money, always. And if it's a cash buyer, after your inspection period, I guess probably your CC&Rs would be your last saving bet, but usually it's your inspection period that's it. And earnest money is hard. That's it. So if the buyer cancels cash, you're out the earnest money. So this is CC&Rs for title and escrow. CC&Rs, those come in and those get sent out usually by the HOA to the buyer. So you always want to ask your buyer, did you get your CC&Rs? Because they have 5 days to review that. That's another escape out. Just a heads up. So, but you know, you don't want to play with fire. You know, because you really got to find something in there that your buyer doesn't like. But what's important to them is if they run a business, if they have company trucks, how many vehicles, and it's really important if the HOA is like, hey, you really can't park in the street, or there's driveway restrictions or something that's really important to your client. Title doesn't always get the CC&Rs and sends them out. So you got to find out.
Oh, sorry. On that point about the CC&Rs, one big thing that I found with my clients is if they have an RV or an RV gate or a trailer, a lot of times the HOA will say, yes, you have an RV, you can park your trailer back there, but it can't be visible above the gate. Or some of them will say, yes, but only at the back of the property. So it's really important to know those specific details, because they could mean a difference between your buyers paying hundreds of dollars for storage when they planned on not having to do that.
Usually when there's an HOA, just because there's an RV gate does not mean there's RV parking.
Not at all.
Not at all. So, no. I never tamper with this contract. There's no reason to change anything. So this is your due diligence, your inspection period. we obviously changed this last year because this is a negotiation piece. And, you know, our normal inspection time period is 10 days. But last year, when it was super crazy, there was agents waiving that completely or doing 3 days, 5 days, you know, whatever. But it's normally 10 days. So for my Wyoming clients, today is their 10th day. I have to get the Benzer over to that listing agent by 11:59 p.m. We have till midnight. Today is my 10th day. So I always set a reminder a day before. So we actually did a conference call last night. I gave them a couple days to review their inspection, make sure that they were, you know, comfortable with everything. What did they want to ask for repairs? Did they want repairs? You know, what was going on? There was termites. And also coming from another state, you've got to explain to them. So I have email templates that I send out and I'll talk to them. Hey, just breathe. Termites to you guys, like California, Wyoming, a little different than Arizona. It's not an emergency mode out here, but they do need to get treated. And you know, people hear horror stories about Arizona. Oh, your monsoons, blah. So calm your clients down, talk to them about the inspection report. Hopefully you have a good inspector and you're there at the walkthrough, because it's not a brand new house. You're just walking through, making sure. And I tell them, look, I'm looking for things like foundation, truss, roof, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, like major things, foundation that we need to walk or pull out. You know, is this house falling down? Is it in a sinkhole? Are you guys going to move in and blow up? Those are things I'm concerned about. And they're like, oh, you know, dumb it down. Talk to them like human beings, because they're going to get this massive report and they're so excited. Put yourself in their shoes. They're like, we just saw this beautiful house and they're like, oh, we're going to play, we're going to swim and it's so pretty. And then they just get hit with like a 50-page report that everything is wrong with this property. And they're like, what are we doing? You know? So it's like their bubble just got burst. And so you just need to talk to them and go, look, once a house is built, probably out of code, we're looking for major things. Plus the house has been lived in. So, you know, it's good to have stuff wrong with it, but it's okay. So most people get that. It's just calm, keeping calm. If you're calm, they're calm. And reminding them like, hey, if you're not okay, we can cancel and get your earnest money back and we'll go find a different house. Because as long as you let them know that you're looking out for them, then they know they can trust you. And that's what's really important, is that you're explaining that you're a professional and that you are a team and they can trust you. So when you send over your Benzer, the seller, you're sending over all the reports also. That had changed and that's part of the contract now. So the seller has 5 days to respond and the Benzer back based on the seller's response. You can either accept it or cancel. We as agents always try to work things out, you know, at the end of the day. And my clients are trying to move here and buy a house, you know, so they're not going to lose it over smoke detectors or, you know, a loose toilet. So, you know, picking up the phone and having a conversation with the other agent on the other line, it really makes a difference. Sometimes that's not always the case, but usually a nice conversation helps. So, this is actually really, really important. Right here is checking sewer or septic or a different system. And there have been cases where a house has septic and an agent has checked the wrong box, and that is a lawsuit for you. And it'll be a lawsuit because it doesn't matter what the buyer has signed. If there's a screw up, you're going to get pulled in. So, and there are property. What? Oh, it got loud. There's actually some properties in Mesa that are 55 plus that are not in an HOA, but they're in the 55 plus communities, and they're half on septic and half on sewer. So there's properties all over our state that have septic, and you'd be surprised. So if the listing agent is not doing their job, it's our job, represent the buyer, just double check. And that's where your inspection period is. And a lot of agents try to rush. You have your inspection period, whether you guys put in 5 days, 7 days, 10 days, use it to the fullest, because that's what protects your client and that earnest money. And if your client is not sure of square footage, not sure of how many rooms, if you're not sure of permits, if you're not sure of remodeling, if you're not sure of anything, your inspection period is the time that you guys bring people in to inspect this property. You can do sewer scopes, you can do all kinds of things, and the seller has to let you in. So,
A quick question about permits.
Yeah.
Is the seller responsible to provide the permit, or is that the buyer's agent? Is that my job to go to the county or wherever to find out if the job was permitted or not?
It depends on, because there's times where it's changed multiple owners and
They don't know
it's
sometimes.
correct. So, it's also the buyer's job, guys. It's not our job. I'll point it out and say, hey, we can see there's been work done here. And I'll even bring it up to the lender. Hey, I've even seen where there were pools and they filled them in.
I've done that. Seen that.
Well, was it done properly? There's a process to that. You don't just fill it in, you got to cap everything. So, also, if someone takes a garage and turns it into a room, or adds square footage, or they remove square footage. So permits, no permits, it affects your home insurance. It can affect if there's a fire or plumbing, or if, you know, it could affect appraisal issues. Well, all that, if you get past your inspection period, the buyer can't cancel over any of that. So it has to get found out during your inspection period.
And then that is
So-
through the county, they carry the permit, they hold that. Okay. Is there a cost associated with that usually, or they just have to do the legwork to get it?
So if there's a permit, it'll be shown in the county.
Okay.
If there's no permit, then you won't see it. So what will happen is once they own the property, they can pay the city or the county money, like a couple $100, to come in and get it up to code. They'll walk through and they'll say, okay, you have to do this to get it up to code. And then we'll permit this room and then add it on additional square footage, blah, 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 blah. Then your tax records change. Now you're paying more money, but now so it's a win-win-win. But a lot of, like, if there's no HOA, you'll see a lot of houses that have been added on without permit. And I always send that property to my lender because you could have appraisal issues. Yeah, you see houses all the time trying to sell for certain square footage, and the appraiser, it's going to depend on what appraiser you get. They may like it, they may not. So, but again, like, you try to do the work for your client, and the buyer is supposed to do some of it too. And
Yeah.
if certain things are important, then you need to find out from your client what's important, because once you're done with your inspection period, that's it, guys. So it's just, you know, if your client, I had some client, they had 5 children, and the swimming laws were very important to them. They just had a friend that lost a little baby. Well, get them the swimming barrier laws, or send them to the website so that they can read them up. You know, it's communication's key. But when you're sending the cancellations, you're sending it to title, and I don't like waiting to the last minute because they'll fight for that earnest money. So you got to be really careful. But read your contracts. It's really important you guys read the contracts because these get updated. Home warranty, I wish this wasn't even in here, but it is. And at this time, you have to, I always tell my buyer, I'm sorry, but we have to decide if we want a home warranty and who's going to pay for it, buyer or seller. And this is a negotiation piece. So, it can make or break a deal. And honestly, someone can go buy a home warranty whenever the heck they want. I don't have one on my house. I can go call and pick one up right now. But if you have like a first-time home buyer, and they could be tight on funds, then this might help them out. Well, if you've already talked to an agent and she's like, hey, that seller is not going to budge, they don't want to pay for a lot of stuff, then you may have to offer something on that list price to get some concessions for your client. So as much as we know the market right now, there's still people out there that think we're in last year. And to get your client under contract, you gotta be a little flexible. You can't say, well, we're not in last year's market. Well, okay, then submit an offer and it'll get rejected. So you can either do it your way, or you can try and just kind of sweeten the deal a little bit. Because in the long run, if you offer list by $1,000 a little higher, it's not going to change your client's monthly mortgage payment by that much. If anything, it's not going to do anything, but it's going to get them a home warranty for a year, which will probably help them out, So, if you need help, let me know. Thinking out of the box. These are always, I know, I feel like I'm going a little slow. I probably need to speed it up, but walkthroughs, this is 3 days before closing. Always do your walkthrough, always 3 days. Because if you wait and you send your walkthrough, which is also a cure notice, guys, if the seller did not do the repairs, if there's crap in the house still, or, oh, by the way, there's damage to the property now, and you send the cure notice, you've now extended your closing date. So do it 3 days before so that your closing date is still the same. And they have those 3 days to get everything done. So this is your cure period also. I try not to be a jerk, but that cure period is super important. I mean, you can't cancel a contract unless you've sent a cure notice. So it's really important. Hold these agents accountable, hold the sellers accountable. We're the buyer, get what you need, hold them accountable. If there's a flip, they need to disclose all the contractors, get receipts. If you guys negotiated on repairs, then make sure all the repairs are done 3 days prior to closing. Additional terms and conditions, this should always be blank. There is no reason this is filled out at all. We have additional forms that are attached for anything. Our contingency, our additional clauses, backups, whatever. The only time this should be filled in is if you're related to the buyer or seller. I'm trying to think of any time, but this really, there should be no additional terms in here because we're not attorneys. And anytime agents write stuff in here, tamper with the contract, we have now just tampered with any kind of language. And you don't know if that's damaging the buyer or the seller if someone breaches or cancels the contract and you have to go to court. So anytime I'm doing a counter or an addendum, I just reference the line item and then what am I going to change? Is it the dollar amount? Is it a date? Is it the company? You know, there's no need to write everything. Just reference the line items and then what is it? So if it's the escrow title company, then it's a line items 300 to 350. And then list the title and escrow company and that information. That way nothing else has changed. Because if you remove a the or an or the, you know, whatever you're doing, you've just reworded a whole section. Time is of the essence, always. Hopefully you guys know calculating time periods. We run every day, man. Even so, you get under contract today, your time periods start tomorrow. Yeah, see this talks about anything, square footage, roof, anything, disclosing. Terms of acceptance, when you're going to make an offer, ask the listing agent, hey, when can the seller respond? Like, I get last year was insane. Right now you can have a normal conversation, go, hey, can your client respond within 24 hours? Because my clients are really anxious and they're nervous, they're excited. So usually 24 hours is accepted. So this is my reminder to put it in there. And then fill out your information. And if you're on a team, you can put in both agents in here. Put in your MLS codes, put in your license numbers. Because let me tell you, when you're writing an offer, you don't want to sit and pull all this stuff up. Like, this is just annoying. When you're writing the offer, it's going to pull in the listing agents. But what if you're writing offers on a couple different properties and it's the whole system could get bogged down, or guys, the system does break. So have plan A, plan B, plan C. I love my templates. I live by them. You know, do you represent the buyer? Do you represent both? Just have everything filled out. Contingencies. Okay. So this is where a lot of agents get a little confused. The first part right here, this is only filled out if your client has a contingency, they have a house to sell, that's a contingency, okay? And the house does not have an offer. So if my client's in Wyoming, I would list the property address, and then they didn't have an offer on it. So I would have checked this offer, checked this box, and then based on their CMA, which by the way, had said 5 months before they would get an offer. Sorry, talking about. So I would put an estimated date in here, maybe 2 months out. I'm estimating that my clients are going to get an offer in here by X amount of a date. I'll put 2 a month, something in here. Accepted offer for the buyer's property. I really don't want to jack with anything else. Because I want them to accept our offer. And I don't want them to cancel on us. So if you change any of these timelines, that's not good. If seller does not cancel this contract within 3 days of receipt, here's the thing. A buyer can come in after us, like a backup offer, and not have a contingency, and they can bump me. But the seller has to give me notice, and they have to give me 3 days to remove my contingency. I can write it in here, maybe 5 days or 7 days, maybe give me 7 days to remove my contingency. Most sellers though are not going to do that. So I don't really want to tamper with that. You know, most clients, if you can remove contingency, great. If not, then maybe the house is not meant to be. I'll just tell you too, if a house has been taken off the market, most agents won't show it. And the sellers, when you sign these contracts, that house has to come off the market. It's listed as under contract with a contingency. And you guys go through the whole thing. You're depositing earnest money, you're going through your inspections, you're ordering the appraisal. It's just, you can't close until your client's house closes. So that's what's happening. And you can't remove that contingency until that other property sells. So my client's always going to have a contingency until their house in Wyoming sells. So my job is to just constantly communicate that everything is going well and smoothly with my listing agent that we're in contract with. So following these and just reading these, and the seller can accept backup offers just in case we end up canceling, because their job is to ensure that they can get under contract too, right? Wearing different hats if you're a listing agent, or if you represent the buyer. But a lot of agents get confused. When does the time clock start? Well, you're in a signed contract. It starts. Doesn't matter if you have a contingency, it's still a contract. Time periods, and this is super clear. The date that the signed contract is delivered and received by. Yes, I would always put that. And this only ever gets signed if I'm checking that very first paragraph. Why an agent would put 3 days after seller's receipt of buyer's accepted docs, I don't know, but because if your buyer never gets accepted offer docs, then technically the seller hasn't really accepted your offer. So check the first box. My clients did get an offer, so we go into this section right here. So I don't even have to worry about this part up here. When you have this, well, and I will go back even to the first part. I don't mean to confuse you guys. This part right here, if the seller does not cancel, this contract shall become contingent upon closing. You have to put kind of an estimated closing date in here. So I always estimate like 30 days after this date. And then this date is going to be just before your offer date. Remember, we wrote an offer. So my Wyoming people were closing on October 13th. And so our offer has a closing date of the 14th. But before we're filling this out, we're going to check with the team, right? So since we have an offer, I'm checking this box, I'm writing in the address, and I know their closing date is this. So I'm writing their closing date, October 13th. And then my clients, and I checked with everybody, their listing agent said they should be able to wire and work with our title company so we can close on the 14th. So our offer is okay to close on the 14th. And then right here, buyer and seller initial. And it follows the section 8 of the contract and any counters. Right here is your job to list any documents that are going to follow with this. And I really try to disclose like the purchase contract. I'll even put in the agent's name. Because the more you can make the other agent comfortable, the more they're going to work with you. Guys, contingencies, this is just so common now. It's not a scary thing. At the end of the day, it's a closing. Closing is a closing. People have money tied up in their houses, and they're moving to Arizona from other states for jobs. So it's common. It's not a scary thing. And if they cancel, you go back on the market and you get another buyer. You can't stay active because you're under contract. But you do your due diligence. You talk to the buyer's lender, you find out how qualified they are. You talk to the other agent, because me, as I'm making the offer, I'm providing the purchase contract from their sale of Wyoming, their team of agents, and that listing agent here contacted them and got all the information on their buyer, that contingency. And so we all had to talk and make everyone comfortable. And so the house that we made the offer on, they received another offer, and that also had a contingency. So it's just a sign of the times right now. So read this contract, read the contingency paperwork. It's not scary, because the first part is either your client's property does not have an offer yet, so it's just going on the market. So if you're representing and you're listing it in Arizona, then you're able to control that also. And if it's out of state, then you get your client's agent's information and communicate with them, find out the rules. You know, I had to Google Wyoming and their real estate laws. And really have a hard talk with that agent and said, look, I need your guys' help a little bit just to help us get under contract. So, but they have laws to follow too. So respecting that, because we're all professionals and we all have ethics and rules to follow, and understanding that they have their business to follow in Wyoming. So, but contingencies are not scary. You don't need to overthink them. The second part is you have a property that's already under contract. So it's just figuring out your closing dates. You can't close on their house to purchase until their other house closes. So figure out the plan that they're going to do in between. And are they moving from out of state? Are they in Arizona already? And how many days do you need that? And what's your team like? How quickly can you get funds? Usually 24 hours is safe. That's safe. And you're not putting your whole team under pressure. So do you guys have questions? You guys are quiet.
This is a
I
really
tried to
nice,
hurry at the last part, sorry. No one has questions?
you know me, Mara, I just shout them out as I have them.
I know, but you're quiet too. It's not, it's very straightforward. The contingency, the sellers have a right to take backups and they can bump you because you have a contingency. And yes, as a buyer, that sucks.
It does get
And
scary. I had my first contingency that closed August 31st with an agent in Minnesota that my buyers didn't know. They were referred to that agent by one of the other agents that they interviewed when they were trying to find me. So they interviewed two other agents, And then we're reminded that I'm an agent by another friend. And so I contacted the agent in Minnesota, and it was very, very clear that he was out for his commission and that was it. He put in escalation, no, he put in that they would bridge appraisal gaps without talking to them or letting them know what he had so much in the contract. It was disclosed in the spuds that it was smoked in the home. He didn't ask about any of that, but he knew there were so many things. And I just told, he would not send me the contract. And I had to do the same thing with my sellers here and say, look, make sure I get everything. And they freaked out. Like, what do I do? Can we fire him? I'm like, not if you want this house, but it's okay because I'm going to look over everything. I'm going to protect you. You can still have this house. He can still do what he's doing on his end. And I just need to look over everything before you agree to it with him so that I can make sure you're protected. So there's ways to, like you said, still have to work with the other buyer, even or agent, even if they're not cooperating with you. Make sure your sellers or buyers know that you are on their side and that you're going to look over stuff and that, yeah, no, this isn't normally something that I'm supposed to handle, but I need to handle this for you because I need you to be protected. That builds trust more than anything.
Well, and my client, they chose the best team in Wyoming. There's 5 agents on this team. But they were surprised. I said, what's your CMA? How long is your house going to take to sell? And she's like, well, I don't know. I said, how do you not know? I go, you can see that every time when we go to look at a house and you want to make an offer, I'm sending you a CMA. So you know, price-wise where we're at, you can see how many days on the market. You guys should have the same thing. They weren't getting feedback on their open houses. I go, okay, well, I get there's no disclosure. I go, but you're paying them. So these are things that you need to ask them. You have the right to know. Because in the end, I need to know because I need to pick closing dates and I need to slow you guys down. So once I actually got a copy of the CMA, I was like, whoa, 5 months. I go, you guys can't offer right now. You need to find a temporary housing. We need to slow down.
That's crazy. Yeah, this one had been on the market for over 90 days, but they did what some other brokerages are doing where they took it off the market, then put it back on. So it looked like it was less amount of time, but it had been on the market for 90 days already in Minnesota, and their house here, we were just slowing down. So it was crazy. It's fun though.
Some MLSs will allow you to do that. Here, you have to take it off for X amount of days, like 60 days before you can put it back on and start at 0. I think it's 60 now, right? It used to be 90. So it, it's a game, but it doesn't matter how much you reduce the price. And that's where it's freaking everyone out over. We're not in massive price drops. People are just like, oh, well, I need to sell my house. Well, it's a normal time. So it just takes time. Buyers are still moving here. It's just they're taking their time, or it's also election time.
And they have more to choose from.
Yeah, and more to choose. So they're looking and they're taking their time, which is a normal thing. But that doesn't mean that you're in emergency mode, dropping your prices frantically, because that is what's going to create an issue. So, educating your clients, educating the databases, that's really super important. But if you're a buyer's agent and or a seller's agent, contingencies are not bad. At the end of the day, if handled properly, it's still a closing, still cash. So as long as everyone's professional, and I spoke to even the team in Wyoming, the buyer and the buyer agent on that property, they were like, oh, we love him. That agent knows what he's doing. It's easy. They're great. And I was like, super. So I relayed that information to our listing out here, to the listing agent out here. So, as long as you're getting that info, it's, that's all you can do. And I told my clients, I go, look, if this doesn't work out, we'll find another house that will take it. So, because we have more to choose from. So.
And they can
you
keep
guys,
for him.
Yeah, any other questions? I mean, I always reference back to use templates. If you guys have questions, reach out to me, but it takes about an hour, if that, to build your templates. Put all your forms together that you need for a buyer, for a seller, for a tenant, for a landlord. go through, fill everything out. But then it's ready for when you have a listing or when you make a purchase. And then depending on the property, you pull those forms in that you need. It'll save you so much time. And then you don't forget to check a box or list things out, you know, that you need to. I know it saved me, so.
I live for templates. Thank you so much, Mara. This has been a really, really awesome overview for me.
Okay, good. Good. Sonia, Nicole, Rochelle, you guys, Tiffany, any of you guys have questions? Anitra? You guys good?
I don't have any questions. Thank you, Mara.
Okay. Good.
I don't have any questions either. You went
Okay.
through it very thoroughly. Thank you so much.
Okay, good. And if you guys do, you guys reach out to me. You can call, text, email, okay?
Okay, I don't have any questions either. It's very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Mara.
All right,
Bye.
I'll talk to you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.